lovelies, I hope you're all well. I'm Missy and welcome to my channel. This is the series where I chat about my loves, dislikes and personal critiques of webcomics. Just a disclaimer, these are just my personal opinions and not to be taken as comic law. I want to encourage creators in any way possible and promote small content creators with the hopes of getting their voices heard. This video will contain spoilers. Please read the linked comic before proceeding to get the most enjoyment. This is an ongoing story, so by the time of release there are likely new chapters and developments not discussed in this video. And with that, let's move on to today's comic. Light of Aluedel, a comic nestled in the fantasy and drama genre, follows the path of Faron, a young man with a strange condition that means, whilst he can do some pretty amazing feats, he's incredibly sickly and suffers with chronic pain whenever it's used. His one hope? To travel across the world for a land only mentioned in passing in folktales, Aluedel, in hopes of finding a cure. An amazing hook. We have a mystery on our hands, gang. And who better to accompany him than his rambunctious companion, Rory, a little toe rag who doesn't understand that sometimes the best course of action is not to shout at the scary guy behind the desk. We love you, Rory. Our prologue introduces us to young Faron, and from the get-go establishes that there is something not quite right about him. I mean, who doesn't like a book club? You don't have to take that crap, Moira. After talking our little champ down, getting him to clear out the books, cue important plot device. Enter Lorelei. We don't get much context on her, other than she's the mother of our second protagonist. And we do get the gist that this little book club isn't all that is said on the tin. I feel myself getting some kind of concern for this woman. I don't know. Our prologue ends in a bit of a spat between Faron's guardian figures. Well, parenting is never said to be easy, and with a child who's chronically ill, I can't imagine the difficulties that will come. It seems that Faron overheard them, and here is where we first hear of our potential destination, Aluedel. There is nothing worse than a child overhearing themselves being referred to as a burden. Frustrated adult or not, that isn't something that can be undone. Already, we have had a phenomenal opening. Within 3 chapters, I find myself extremely invested. We have a child unable to live a normal life, stunted by his condition, confined under strict rules, and hints of a mysterious place that could hold a cure for him, and we don't even know if it exists. I'm in. Hook, line, and sinker. 14 years into the future, we are welcomed to the town of Burmel, and at the same time as our 2 young protagonists. I love it when I'm on the same page as the main characters. I get to learn everything at the same pace as them. We get a brilliant introduction to Rory, our little rascal, who has every quip under his belt. Cheeky little shite. Settling in at the Rosebush Inn, I discovered that Faron takes more medication than my father-in-law with a heart that can get a bit quirky. Like, yeesh. This poor boy is pilled up to his eyeballs. Bringing an empty bottle, which I'm thinking may have been a little ploy to get outside. We follow our duo out onto the main street where I determine that Rory has no clue what's actually going on. He's just in it for the ride. I adore Rory's character so much. I feel his mannerisms are written so well. He feels like a believable young boy just dragged along because dad had to go on a work trip. His curiosity and wonder for everything is completely understandable of a child in a new place, as it's shown that he's never been away from home. Also, Faron being the responsible older brother figure, again with all the details of an irritable teen that just wants to get this crap over and done with. I love this dynamic between the two. It's such a good way to get us invested in their characters. Rory with his fiery and opportunistic outlook, and Faron with his pessimistic view. However, sometimes I feel Faron can be a bit of a misery guts. Yes, he does have a chronic illness, and that's enough reason to dull his positive outlook on life, and it clearly causes him a great deal of pain? Sickness? I don't really know how to describe it when the boy can't feel pain. But I feel like he puts more of a fight resisting hope than fighting to look for a cure for his condition. I feel like it could come across as potentially ungrateful, but I don't think that's right. I believe, putting it simply, that he doesn't want to be a burden to those around him. I think this leaves him for some great room for character growth, but he can be a bit of a downer sometimes. No offense, Faron. Heading into the library in hopes of accessing the archives, with the goal of grabbing an old map that Lorelei has been searching for, we have ourselves a snooty librarian. Much like Faron in his younger days, Rory also hasn't been taught that you never mess with a librarian, and Rory is out here spitting fire at the sheer disrespect. Naturally, they're met with some less than happy guards. Okay, hold up. They just outright slap a child who legitimately doesn't give 2 Fs. Then, when Faron speaks up, they just wallop him? And from the expression on Faron's face, that wasn't a good idea. Honestly, I half expected Faron to turn around and deck the guards, but they get booted out and it's clear that Faron, well, he's not in a good way. And I don't know if the library's insurance will cover punched by a guy with incredible strength. Either way, it's clear that the experience pained him greatly, and that he has a fair whack of self-control. Rory, understandably, doesn't get why Faron doesn't just fight back and give them what he's got, not really measuring the seriousness of the situation and that it already escalated out of control. Thanks, Rory. As well as not taking accountability. Not unexpected for someone so young, Rory's sense of justice is very strong. Faron shows an incredible amount of maturity in this moment, not only having the task of cooling off his own head, but also cooling off Rory. They complement each other so perfectly. Heck, dealing with regulating your own emotions as well as those of another is no easy feat, especially when one of them is an incredibly hot-headed little guy that just wants to throw hands. Gaining more insight to the sheer amount of self-control that Faron has to have, not only for his own health but for the safety of others. Pretty sure that punch would have done more than cave a face in. Ah, yes, Rory. What are we going to tell your pops? Well, I have to admire Rory's honesty. He's straight to the point. I hate to break this to you, Rory, but technically it was your fault. But I love your spirit. Next, we cut back 6 months and have an incredibly sweet moment between Lorelei and Faron. Gosh, I love this chapter so much. The interaction just feels so organic, and although there is a slight hint of something called the Amber Tonic, there is no heavy exposition on what it is, just a hint that it's super rare and important. To be honest, this comic is filled with lots of little dropped hints and slow reveals. It makes it super easy to read, unlike another comic I know of. Despite Lorelei not being his birth mother, it's clear she feels very deeply for him, which was also established earlier on in the prologue. She hasn't given up hope, even if Faron himself has, and her sheer determination and passion is such a beautiful contrast to Faron's own feeling of hopelessness. Yes, Rory really does take after his mother. And, once again, we get that little hint, Aluedel. We get some pretty cool history and a nice lore segment, revealing that Lorelei is pretty well travelled, and despite her adamant belief and search for Aluedel to its supposed location, she hasn't seen head nor tail of this mysterious place. Like it never existed at all. I mean, sure, it was rumoured to have been destroyed by a massive volcanic eruption, but so was Pompeii, and there is still clear evidence that that existed. Oh, okay. So she's heavily researched all the records she could get her hands on, and nothing suggests it was in the path of destruction. Wait, so where did it go? Not destroyed, but no evidence to tell us that it existed at all. and it was known for its massive leaps in medical advancements. Something, or someone's, clearly wants this place to stay buried. We also get an intro to the best character in the comic, Overall, the opening chapters have established a strong mystery and basis for the entire story in such a concise way. Never once did I feel I was being overwhelmed by all the information, and to reiterate on a previous point, it's so nice to be able to learn alongside Faron and Rory. Makes me feel like I'm this silent character that gets to have a little peek into all that's going on into their lives. It's super fun so far, and there are such beautiful moments that are heartwarming and show emotional conflict, and others that lighten the mood and have a bit of comedic relief that is needed after a heavy segment. After a more than tragic first attempt at entering the archives, do we A. Consider re-evaluating our attempt and involve a responsible adult? B. Let the heat of our first attempt die down, apologise and try again later? Or C. Break our way in on the same night? C. The answer is C. Oh boy, I'm questioning this man's parental judgment at this point. I mean, yes, Faron lied. However, he also lied earlier, so apologies if I'd start calling bullshit at this point. I have to admit, this segment has got me a little conflicted. So I know there are libraries out there that are indeed open 24 hours. I believe St Anne's College Library in Oxford is one, but that's a privilege only for students of the college. So I have to ask, why is this library wide open for anyone to just wander into? Okay, fine. Maybe it's just the front entrance. Oh, what the f***? Also, only 2 guards for this entire building? A building that has suspected records of a place that has already been established to be very well hidden. This next bit, honestly, was super hard to read and upsetting, so if you struggle with content discussing self-loathing and mental breakdowns, I recommend heading to the end. What really got me here was the amount of immeasurable anguish. Faron's true pain reveals itself in pure emotional turmoil, causing him to splurge out every hurt that he's internalized in a moment of all-consuming emotional agony. And the biggest hurt of all? His very involvement in the lives of those around him, carrying the blame for everything, even the death of Rory's mother, Lorelei. Rory really impresses me here. He, understandably, misses his mother, and I honestly would have seen it somewhat justifiable for him to turn and be angry with Faron for getting so caught up in his own worries. But he doesn't. He stands up, and despite his own pain, he defends Faron from himself. There was no gushing, no mass amount of words between them, and at that moment, just a simple don't. And that had the power to halt Faron's self-destructive path. I know I mentioned earlier describing Faron as the older brother figure to Rory, and I still very much stand by that. However, this moment altered that dynamic, showcasing Rory's emotional maturity. It could have been so easy for Rory to blame Faron for everything, to feed all of Faron's self-doubts and disdain. I wouldn't blame him for having a form of resentment towards him. Whether or not that's there, I don't know. What I do know is that they have a very strong bond, and it shines through brilliantly in this chapter. A light passes over them, snapping them back to their task at hand. Oh crap, guards? No. What about a young lass with a very nervous disposition that is about to get dragged into a plot she doesn't understand? Sorry, Clover. I highly recommend this story for anyone looking for a slow burn mystery with well thought out characters, emotional rides, and a thirst for answers. Thank you to the wonderful Razdazzleton for putting his comic forward for me to have a chat about. Please head over and support them. Their socials are both on screen and in the description below. You will not regret it. Also, if you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for more content. And if you want to go that extra step in supporting me, why not head over to my Ko-Fi to fuel my coffee problem? Finally, my husband and I have a comic together called Legacy. Why not come and check it out and let us know what you think? Link below. Thank you again so much, my lovelies, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!